The Vermont eCycles program is providing this training for all collectors in Vermont operating in the Vermont State Standard Plan collection program funded by manufacturers. The eCycles program is currently part of many programs funded by manufacturers of products. For resources associated with the program, please go to www.ecycles.vermont.gov or vtrecycles.com under the Special Recycling Programs and the orange chasing arrow symbol. There is a section at the bottom of the Special Recycling page which offers resources to collectors for all manufacturer-funded EPR or special recycling programs. As a collection site under the Vermont eCycles manufacturer-funded program, it is important to know what can be collected from customers at no charge. This program limits not only what is collected under the program, but from whom it is collected. Those are referred to as covered electronic devices from covered entities. There is a separate training that goes into this in detail, so we will only touch on it briefly in this training. First, what is a covered electronic device that is collected at no charge under the eCycles program? It is a computer, computer monitor, any device that contains a cathode ray tube, a printer, which is a desktop printer, including multifunctional devices that are printers and perform other functions, a television of any type, and a computer peripheral, meaning anything that is exclusive to a computer that provides input or output from a computer. Remember, in the beginning, we said it must be a covered device from a covered entity. Once you determine it is a covered device, there is no limit to the amount of covered devices that can be collected from a covered entity. A covered entity is a Vermont household or business with 10 or fewer employees, a 501c3 charity, or a school district. Note that the school must either be a part of a school district or have 10 or fewer employees to be a covered entity. Last, if anyone just brings in 7 or fewer covered devices, then there is no need to check if they fall into a specific covered entity category. Now, the eCycles program is unique in that a collection site cannot refuse to take covered electronics from a covered entity, no matter if they are within the town or district. They simply need to reside in the state. So if your facility sells stickers, for instance, to residents to pay for trash, and someone from another part of the state brings only covered electronic waste, and they are a covered entity, then the sticker would not be required. Remember, there is no limit of how much covered electronic waste can be dropped off by a Vermont household, a business with 10 or fewer employees, a 501c3 charity, or a school district. No matter what part of the state, or anyone from Vermont brings you 7 or fewer covered electronic devices, you cannot refuse to collect. The only time you can refuse is if your facility is at capacity and taking more electronics would cause you to not meet the storage standards for the program. So let's talk about the requirements for collecting electronic waste. Certain electronics are banned from being placed in the regular trash in Vermont. The electronics covered by the eCycles program are at the top of this poster, and they are labeled as free for collection from covered entities. They are classified as covered or paid for by the program. They are collected, labeled as covered electronic waste. The remainder of this poster is a list of non-covered electronics. They are banned from landfill disposal, but since they are not paid for by the manufacturers, your facility can charge for their collection, especially since your facility will likely have to pay a recycler to recycle them. The only management difference between covered electronics and non-covered electronics is the electronics at the bottom of this list can be placed in metal recycling if they have the appropriate metal content to be accepted by your metal recycler. You should check with your metal recycler first before placing any non-covered banned electronics in metal recycling. Again, there is a separate training to help collectors identify if a device is banned, covered, or non-covered. Some facilities only collect the devices that are paid for under the eCycles program by manufacturers. If your facility does not collect any of the devices on the bottom part of this poster, identified as non-covered banned electronics, please know which items are banned so you can keep them out of the regular trash, and refer your customers to the district or town for information on where they can properly recycle these non-covered electronic devices. Just to recap, covered electronic waste from anyone, computers, monitors, printers, televisions, and computer peripherals, cannot go into the regular trash, and they cannot be metal recycled. This also applies to parts from covered electronics, pieces of televisions, or badly broken electronics. None of those items can go into the regular trash or metal recycling. Let's talk about storage standards. For electronics, all of the ones on the banned list that we just talked about, they must be stored in a manner to prevent breakage. So sometimes that means just being careful when placing devices into a Gaylord. It may mean making sure that larger devices are not dropped on smaller ones. All electronics must be stored within a structure to protect from precipitation, and that structure must have a surface that allows for easy cleanup should a device break. The floor cannot be dirt or rock. If it is wood, it must not have any holes where glass or other releases cannot be easily cleaned. There must be adequate storage space, and electronics cannot be stored outside under any circumstances. So by now, you have probably realized that these are not photos of proper storage. So what does proper storage look like? These are some examples of proper storage. Electronics are carefully stored in a Gaylord or stacked on pallets. Televisions are often stacked on pallets and shrink wrapped with screens facing. The device has less chance to break. Also, if Gaylords are not overfilled, pallets can be stacked on top of Gaylords to conserve space, and also when being transported. Covered electronic waste must be kept separate from any other waste, especially separate from non-covered electronics. Collector payment depends on this separation, as manufacturers will only pay for the devices they manufacture as required by this program and by law. On occasion, a collector receives a large device that cannot fit into a Gaylord or on a pallet. If a customer, for instance, drops off a large flat screen or rear projection television that will not safely fit in a Gaylord or on a pallet, the large device can be stored in your electronics collection structure with your other electronics, individually with its own label as a single large device sitting on the floor next to palletized devices. Last but not least, banned electronics cannot be stored on site for longer than 1 year. Covered electronics must have a label. The label is important for several reasons. First, it is required by the state to identify the waste within a Gaylord placed on a pallet or large devices individually. The label shown above also has a place for the location name and facility ID number. This information is so that a recycler can identify the source of the collected waste to notify the contractor and state for proper payment, and so the facility pounds collected can be reported in January for the amount collected in the year prior by the facility. Last, as we mentioned in the previous slide, the state management requirements also identify that electronic waste cannot be kept on site for more than 1 year. This is where you can prove the length of time the waste has been stored at the facility, and why this label and the date should be on the Gaylord when the first item is placed in the container for storage. Same with the items on the pallet. This date shows an inspector how long the waste has been stored on site. The label above is for covered electronics, and the covered electronics are paid for the collection, transport, and recycling of computers, monitors, printers, televisions, and computer peripherals by the manufacturers of those very devices. These two posters or signs must be clearly posted at your facility if you collect your electronic waste: computers, monitors, printers, televisions, and computer peripherals. The collection location sign lets customers know what items your facilities can collect for free from whom. The covered entities who have no limits on the amount of covered devices, and the rest that are limited to 7 devices per visit. Second, a sign or poster that informs your customers that it is their responsibility for any data on the equipment they drop off for free recycling. These posters and banned electronics posters are made available by the state. Your facility may have its own posters that identify the same information. The management standards also identify that your facility must have an attendant on site to accept electronics and hopefully place them carefully into the correct collection container. There must be a lock at minimum on the facility gate or on the storage unit where electronics are kept. This ensures that the electronics that are stored at your facility are kept safe after hours. Next, if a covered device has a permanent cord, those cords cannot be cut for any reason. They must remain on the device. Loose cords that are part of any of the covered electronic devices should also be placed in the collection container with the device. Last and very important, all staff that manage electronic waste at your facility must be trained, and this video is a good way to make sure that happens. Next, as a part of the registration for participation in the eCycles program, you would have checked a box that your facility has a release plan. If you are a permitted facility, you may already have a release plan, but if you are a small facility or an event, which is also required to have this, you can fulfill this requirement with this template and a copy of the fact sheet for the management of electronic waste, both shown on this slide. To obtain these, go to vtrecycles.com, click on the orange chasing arrows icon for special recycling, scroll to the bottom of the page under Collectors Resources, and look for Release Plan under the Electronics section. Moving on to broken electronic devices. If an electronic device breaks at your facility, you must clean it up immediately. Do not put any of this waste into the regular trash. Even broken electronics or electronic parts are banned from being disposed in the regular trash. Handle these devices carefully. Any broken electronic device must be placed into a container. Some facilities place small broken electronics into contractor bags. Label the bag and place it on top of a covered electronic waste gaylord, where it can be easily seen by the recycler. Remember, recyclers' staff do not need a broken surprise at the bottom of the gaylord. Other facilities will individually box a device to keep staff or customers from being cut or hurt. Or larger facilities often have a single gaylord where all broken electronic waste can be placed with a label on the gaylord. Each container must be labeled. Notice this is for broken covered electronics, and this label identifies computers, monitors, printers, televisions, and computer peripherals that are broken. Again, broken does not mean that they are no longer working. Most commonly, when we say broken, it is probably going to be glass. If it is banned electronics that are not covered, you would place them in a separate container from the covered with the same broken, non-covered electronic waste. Large televisions that cannot be placed into a gaylord will commonly have broken screens. If taping the screen with some strong tape like duct tape can prevent further breakage, or taping a bag or cardboard around the device works, that's also allowed. Remember, the idea is to prevent further breakage or release and to protect your staff. A CRT poses its own risk when it comes to breakage. The glass from a CRT contains lead, and that lead dusts when it breaks. Unfortunately, because of the copper wiring on the back of the tube, many people remove the plastic case or wood from around large CRT tubes to take the wiring before bringing it to your facility. You must accept the TV, even if it has been dismantled, like these in the photo. Parts must also be accepted, but the CRT tube is capable of imploding and throwing glass in all directions if something lands on it and it breaks. In addition, the wiring on the back of the tube can still carry a strong electrical charge long after it's been unplugged. These are some photos that were actually taken at facilities. Unfortunately, they should have been in containers labeled as broken covered electronic waste with the facility name and the date that they were containerized. Now let's talk about lithium-ion batteries. Those are the highly flammable ones that are in use in laptop computers, tablets, and any small electronic device. The older laptops especially had these batteries in a hard case, and it was not uncommon for people to remove them. Today, computers are smaller and thinner, and small electronic devices have batteries that are not in a hard case, but in thin foil bags, sometimes in plastic holders with the foil exposed. That foil, if punctured or torn, can very often cause an immediate fire. So do not ever attempt to remove any batteries from electronics. Check the electronic device for any bulging or leaking batteries and do not place that device with other electronics. If you receive just a battery at your facility, manage it separately from electronic waste to prevent a larger device from puncturing or breaking the battery. If you participate in the battery program, batteries that are not bulging or leaking can be placed in your battery collection box. If a battery is bulging or leaking, place it outside of your facility in a separate container filled with kitty litter, sand, or even dirt, and especially away from anything flammable. Many districts and transfer stations have received a kit from the state for battery safety. Please contact your district, the state, or the battery recycling program if you have any questions. Last but not least, let's touch one more time about the importance of paying close attention when packing a Gaylord with computers, monitors, printers, televisions, and computer peripherals. First, you will take up less room and there will be less breakage or release if items are stored carefully. Notice in the first photo the two circles. The top circle is a label that should be on a Gaylord, except there's no Gaylord around these materials. And when the transporter comes, they must load everything into Gaylords and onto pallets for transport. So make sure to put all of the electronics either in Gaylords or on a pallet. And the only time you want to place any electronics separately would be individual items that are too large. Next in the photo, the lower circle on the left is a bare CRT tube. The more that is piled on top, the more likely for that glass to implode and send glass particles everywhere. The photo on the right is an opportunity for fire from large devices on top of others. Breakage, and remember these management standards are required by state law. These are items that are required to be containerized or palletized, labeled and dated to prove the length of time they are stored at a facility. Anything less results in compliance issues. So manage these electronics carefully for your safety, the safety of your customers, and to prevent releases into the environment. For more information and resources, go to ecycles.vermont.gov or the special recycling page at vtrecycles.com. Thank you so much for your time.